All right, here we go. Today we're diving into my top 10 draft targets for the Atlanta Falcons in the first round. This is my final list, the one I'd hand straight to Terry Fontenot if he came asking, "Hey, who should we take if things go sideways on draft night?" This is based on who's realistically available at 15, not some fantasy world where Marvin Harrison Jr. drops into your lap. We're going to kick things off with picks 10 through 6. Now, I hope these guys aren't the actual pick at 15, but if the top 5 are all off the board and you're looking for the best of the rest, this is the order I'd go. Coming in at number 6, and yeah, this might shock some people, it's Malachi Starks. Yup, not an edge rusher. I get it. Atlanta desperately needs help getting after the quarterback. Haven't had a consistent pass rush since basically forever. But hear me out. Starks might just be the best overall player out of this bunch. We always talk about best player available, right? Well, Starks checks that box in bold letters. He's a smart, rangy safety, and I think when you project these guys out 3, 5, 10 years, Starks is the dude with the most upside. If the Falcons walked away with him and paired him with Jesse Bates and A.J. Terrell, that secondary would be nasty. I know it doesn't fix the edge rusher problem, but sometimes you take the stud and figure the rest out later. Now moving on to number 5, just ahead of Starks, I've got another safety, Nick Emmanwory out of South Carolina. And depending on who you ask, some folks have him ahead of Starks, others don't. For me, they're basically 1A and 1B, but I gave Emmanwory the edge. Why? Fit. This dude plays like a linebacker disguised as a safety. The Falcons brought in Divine Diablo from the Raiders in free agency, and that tells me they're sniffing around guys who bring that hybrid heat. Emmanwory is 6'3", 220 pounds, ran a freaky 4.38 in the 40, and he's not just a workout warrior. This guy produced. He led South Carolina in tackles as a true freshman, was an All-American right away, and had 2 pick sixes last year. You don't usually get elite traits and production in the same guy. Take Shamar Stewart from A&M, for example. Insane tools, but only 1.5 sacks in 3 years. Emmanwory's got both. He brings the juice, the build, the numbers, everything you want. All right, look, I know what you're thinking. Hey, this still doesn't solve Atlanta's pass rush problem. And yeah, you're right. But if the top edge guys are off the board by the time we hit pick 15, I'm totally fine pivoting to the best player available. You can't force a pick just because it fills a need, especially when the value isn't there. Now let's get into picks 4 through 1, starting with number 4, our first Georgia Bulldog on the list, Micah Williams, defensive end. And listen, I know everyone wants to label these guys as edge rushers, but when we're talking about fit in Atlanta's system, we've got to be specific. Williams isn't an outside linebacker. With his size, 6'5", 260 pounds, this guy's a hand-in-the-dirt three-point stance, 5-tech type of defensive end in a 3-4 front. So here's the deal. Pros? He's a freak athlete. Classic Georgia defender. Big, strong, twitchy. When you line up across from him, you feel it. But here's the con. The production just didn't match the traits this past season. And yeah, I get it. He wasn't even the top pass rusher on his own team. That's a bit of a red flag when you're talking about a first-round pick. But let's be fair. The guy was dealing with a high ankle sprain early in the year. That stuff lingers, and it definitely limited him. Still, when it came time for the big stage, the SEC championship game, Williams showed up and bullied the Texas O-line. He showed flashes of exactly why teams are drooling over his upside. And speaking of Texas, can we just chill with the Kelvin Banks talk? I know the Falcons have sniffed around offensive line help, but Terry, if you're watching, don't do it, please. Back to Williams. He's that classic traits-based pick. He's not dominating box scores right now, but the tools are insane. You give this kid some good coaching and some time to grow. Remember, he's only 20 years old. He's got the potential to live in opposing backfields. He's not a finished product yet, but the ceiling? It's sky high. Let the kid develop, and he could be a monster in a couple of years. Now listen, I really think Micah Williams could blossom into a legit stud for Atlanta. The thing with Georgia defenders is this: they're so stacked with talent that it's tough for any one guy to shine until maybe their final season. You've got first-rounders all over the place, and guys are rotating in and out. So when you're watching film, you're not getting 3 full years of dominant tape because the dude might have only started for 1. That's just how it works with those Georgia dogs. I mean, just think about last year's draft class, loaded with Bulldogs. Where was Williams supposed to fit into that rotation as a young dude? He had to wait his turn, but now it's his shot, and the tools are there for him to explode in the NFL. Now let's get to number 3 on the list. Marshall defensive end Mike Green. This one's been a hot topic all offseason. You ask around, and it's been the same debate. Mike Green, Micah Williams, James Pierce Jr., who's the best out of the bunch? Everyone's got a different answer. But I'm planting my flag right now. Mike Green is my guy at number 3 for the Falcons. Back in January, nobody was really talking about him. We were over here like, hey, this dude from Marshall might be a day 2 sleeper. And now, I think he's firmly in that first-round conversation. Let's talk measurables. 6'3", 251 pounds. Not as big as Williams, but Green's got a different kind of twitch. He's slippery off the edge, explosive first step, and he's got that kind of chip-on-his-shoulder toughness that you want in a guy coming from a smaller program. This dude's been grinding his whole career, and now he's ready to bring that work ethic to the big stage. All right, so back to Mike Green. This dude's got legit speed in a straight line. Now, he's not going to be throwing people around with a bull rush or raw power, but he wins with flexibility and bend. And let me tell you, bend is one of the most underrated traits when we talk edge rushers. Go fire up some Nick Bosa highlights. That man makes a career off dipping under tackles and ripping through with leverage. That's the kind of skill set we're talking about with Green. He's not the biggest dude, measured in at 251 at the combine, but he looked more like 241 during the season. That might raise some eyebrows for teams who want a bigger edge presence, but here's the thing, production doesn't lie. Green led the nation with 17 sacks and racked up 59 pressures. That's real deal disruption off the edge. And when you're building a defense, that's the kind of chaos you want. But here's where it gets tricky. He's only got 1 full year as a starter, and there's some serious off-the-field baggage. He started his college career at Virginia, but got dismissed in 2022 due to sexual assault allegations, 1 from high school, 1 from college. He then transferred to Marshall, barely played in 2023, and finally had his breakout season in 2024. So yeah, this one's not just about film and numbers. This is about character. The Falcons have to do their homework here. If the front office is confident in his background and believes in the guy, he could be a steal. If not, you're potentially looking at a player who never sees the end of his rookie deal. That's the risk. Just look at Nicholas Petit-Frere. The Titans took a shot, and it backfired. You can't miss on a first-rounder like that. And don't let the small school things scare you off either. Plenty of studs didn't come from Alabama or Michigan. Hassan Reddick, Khalil Mack, even Jason Pierre-Paul. They weren't from the Blue Bloods, but they came in with fire and freak traits. Mike Green has that same mold. Now, the next 2 names, they're probably pipe dreams to still be sitting there at pick 15. Green, he's right in that sweet spot, realistic and ready. So if Green's the pick, how we feeling? Are we talking Royale with cheese level excitement or nah? Now let's hit number 2, and I'm going with Michigan corner Will Johnson. This was a tough call. I went back and forth between Johnson and my number 1 guy, but Johnson comes in just a tick below, mostly because of the Falcons' positional needs. That said, don't get it twisted. Will Johnson is a baller. At 6'1", 194 pounds. He's got that prototypical build for an outside corner. I fully expect this dude to walk into the league and be a day one starter wherever he lands. So let's talk about Will Johnson, the corner out of Michigan. And let me tell you, this dude is built for Sundays. You want size? He's got it. 6'1", long arms, physical presence. He was a 5-star recruit, hometown hero in the state of Michigan, and he didn't just commit to the Wolverines. He asked for Charles Woodson's number. Respect. And then all he did was start for 3 years, anchor that secondary, and help lead one of the best defenses in college football to a national championship. He's put together arguably the best resume for a Michigan DB in the last decade, maybe even the whole Big Ten. Now, is he a burner? Nah, you're not getting Denzel Ward level speed. Ward's out here like a jet on takeoff. Will Johnson? Not slow, but not a track star either. What he does have is elite instincts, top-tier IQ, and a natural feel for the game that keeps him in the right spot every single time. That's why he pulled down 4 picks in 2023. Now, he did miss a good chunk of 2024 with a turf toe injury, and let's be real, a lot of Michigan defenders were banged up last year. And once the season started slipping, some of those guys probably looked at their draft stock and said, "Yeah, I'm good." Can't really blame him. So why is he number 2 and not number 1? Well, Mike Hughes. The Falcons re-signed Hughes to a 3-year deal, and that's the kind of contract that usually means we're planning on keeping this guy around. And when you've already got A.J. Terrell and now Hughes locked in, maybe you don't spend pick 15 on another corner, even if he's a stud. But look, I don't love that logic, because Will Johnson is a baller. If you're preaching best player available, this is that pick. The guy you look back on and say, man, how'd he fall to 15? But I get it. Coaches need wins now. If you draft a guy who rides the bench all year, that seat starts getting hot real fast. GMs and coaches might lean towards someone who fills an immediate need, even if he's not the top talent. And now we're at number 1 on the board. Give me Jaylen Walker, linebacker from Georgia. And yeah, I said linebacker. I'm not calling him an edge rusher. Not going to lump him in with that group, because that's not how I see him fitting in Atlanta's scheme. All right, wrapping this thing up with the guy I've got number 1 on my Falcons big board, Jaylen Walker, linebacker from Georgia. And before anybody jumps in with, he's an edge rusher, nope, not the way I see it. To me, Walker is an off-ball linebacker who's got the flexibility to moonlight on the edge if you need him to. But his home? It's in the middle of the field, creating chaos from everywhere. He's 6'1", 243 pounds. So yeah, maybe a little undersized for a traditional outside linebacker or hand-in-the-dirt defensive end. But when you turn on the tape, man, this guy is everywhere. He only started 1 season at Georgia, but he lined up inside, outside, dropped into coverage, blitzed up the gut. He was a straight-up chess piece. That's why he's my top pick for Atlanta. Not for every team, for Atlanta. Some franchises already have a defense. The Falcons, they need dogs. They need talent. Right now, it's Jesse Bates, it's A.J. Terrell, and, well, that's kind of it when it comes to cornerstone pieces. You ever done a puzzle? You start at the corners. Falcons have 2. Let's add another. Jaylen Walker is a piece you can build around. He's got that Caden Ellis role times 10, but with way more pass rush upside. Let me put it this way. Walker led Georgia in pressures, pass rush win rate, every metric you want. And you know where he ranked in pass rush snaps? 7th. 7th. So, less opportunity, but still more production than everyone else? That screams hidden superstar. That screams dig a little deeper and you'll find a gold mine. Look, I get it. If the Falcons already had a solid linebacker core or edge group, maybe this pick feels like a reach. But they don't. They're in talent acquisition mode. And Jaylen Walker, he's the most talented guy I've watched in this class for Atlanta. Now, one quick heads up. I know some folks are going to toss out the Micah Parsons comp. Let's be careful with that. Parsons is a freak, a unicorn. He's a 6'3", 246-pound monster who made the switch from linebacker to full-time edge in Dallas and just dominated. Walker, not quite the same build, but I get the vision. You want a dynamic, hybrid playmaker with explosive traits? You're not crazy for seeing a little Parsons flash in Jaylen Walker. Just don't expect the same trajectory. Expect a day-one contributor, a movable weapon, and a potential star if developed right. Now listen, I'm not going to sit here and throw out the lazy take like Jaylen Walker is this year's Micah Parsons. That's just unfair to Micah, man. Remember? Parsons didn't even have a combine because it was 2020 and COVID shut that whole thing down. It was just pro days. But let's say, best case scenario, Walker ends up being 90% of Micah Parsons. You're telling me at pick 15, you wouldn't take 90% of Micah freaking Parsons? Because I sure as hell would. And here's another thing. Walker's young. He's still got room to grow. From 6'1" to maybe 6'1", 250 pounds. Same size range as Parsons. You give him a couple off seasons in an NFL strength program, don't be surprised if he bulks up and levels up just like Micah did. So for me, Jaylen Walker is the guy. That's my number one draft target for the Atlanta Falcons. But now I want to hear from y'all. Who's your guy? Who do you want the Falcons to grab with that first round pick? Drop it in the comments. Let's talk about it. To wrap this whole thing up, yeah, it's been a long-winded one, but I wanted to get this full top 10 Falcons draft wish list out there. Every angle, every scenario. And to close it out proper, we're doing what we always do. Giving a shout out to one of the homies in the comments.